Nobody expected a hospital professional to speak out. But when a nurse allegedly stepped forward with concerns about Chrisean Rock and her son, the entire conversation online shifted in seconds. What had previously been internet speculation suddenly turned into something people were calling serious enough to pay attention to. According to circulating claims, a nurse familiar with pediatric care patterns suggested that there may be warning signs in the child's development that should not be ignored. And the moment that idea hit social media, everything exploded. Clips started spreading, comment sections filled instantly, and thousands of viewers began rewatching old videos of Chrisean Rock and her son, trying to see what they might have missed. Because once someone introduces the idea of medical concern, people don't just scroll past it. They start looking closer. They start questioning everything. Was there something in those early videos that was overlooked? Were people online overreacting before? Or were they actually noticing patterns early? And most importantly, why are so many voices suddenly joining the same conversation? Supporters of Chrisean Rock immediately pushed back, saying the internet has been unfairly targeting her for months and twisting normal parenting moments into something darker. They argue that social media is quick to judge, especially when it comes to young mothers in the spotlight. But critics say this is different. They claim it's not about opinions anymore. It's about repeated concerns, repeated clips, and repeated moments that don't sit right with viewers who have been following the situation closely. And now, with a nurse's perspective added into the mix, even without official confirmation, the debate has reached a completely new level of intensity. Because when medical language enters a social media controversy, the tone changes instantly. It stops being entertainment. It starts feeling like a case people are trying to solve in real time. And as the claims continue to spread, one question is dominating every comment section. Is this just another wave of online speculation? Or is there something happening behind the scenes that people are finally beginning to notice? The story begins in a space where celebrity fame meets relentless public curiosity, and where every personal detail becomes fuel for online debate. In recent months, Chrisean Rock has remained one of the most talked about names across social media platforms, not just because of her career in entertainment, but because of the intense attention surrounding her personal life, especially her journey into motherhood. Every appearance, every post, and every silence has been dissected, reposted, and reinterpreted by millions watching from the outside. What makes this situation even more explosive is how quickly narratives form in the digital age. A single clip, a single comment, or an unverified statement can travel faster than official clarification. And in this case, that is exactly what appears to have happened. The focus of this unfolding controversy centers around claims allegedly made by a hospital nurse, whose identity has not been publicly confirmed, but whose supposed remarks have ignited a firestorm of speculation across social media platforms. According to circulating online discussions, the nurse allegedly spoke about observations related to Chrisean Rock's newborn son while she was receiving medical care. These claims, which have not been independently verified by any hospital authority or official representative, suggest that there may be more to the story than what has been publicly shared. However, it is crucial to understand that what is driving this narrative is not confirmed documentation, but rather viral reposts, commentary threads, and heavily edited social media clips that often lack full context. Despite the lack of official confirmation, the internet rarely waits for verification. Fans, critics, and gossip commentators immediately began connecting dots, analyzing past interviews, live streams, and emotional moments shared by Chrisean herself. Her journey into motherhood has already been highly public, marked by emotional highs, controversial relationships, and intense scrutiny from both supporters and critics. This pre-existing attention created the perfect environment for any rumor, verified or not, to spread like wildfire. To understand why this particular claim gained traction so quickly, it's important to step back and look at the broader background. Chrisean Rock has built her public identity in a space where reality television energy meets social media virality. Her life has often unfolded in real time, with personal struggles and milestones broadcast to millions. This level of exposure creates a unique dynamic. The audience feels emotionally invested, but also entitled to speculate, analyze, and sometimes even judge private matters as if they were public property. When news of her son's birth first reached the public, it was met with a mixture of celebration and concern. Supporters expressed joy and encouragement, while critics immediately began questioning circumstances, timing, and details surrounding the birth. This dual reaction is not uncommon in celebrity culture, but in this case, it intensified due to the already volatile online conversations surrounding her relationships and personal decisions. In the midst of this environment, the alleged hospital nurse revelation emerged as a new focal point. Posts began circulating claiming that someone from inside the medical environment had supposedly shared insights that contradicted or expanded upon what had been publicly known. Some versions of the story suggested concern, others hinted at confusion, and some exaggerated entirely unverified details into dramatic claims designed to capture attention. As expected, social media platforms reacted instantly. Comment sections filled with theories, reaction videos started appearing within hours, and content creators rushed to interpret every fragment of the rumor. Some claimed the nurse's alleged statements exposed hidden truths, while others argued it was just another example of misinformation spreading without control. The lack of a verified source did little to slow the momentum. If anything, it made the story even more intriguing to audiences who are constantly drawn to mystery and controversy. At the same time, it is important to recognize how celebrity narratives often evolve in stages. First comes the event itself, in this case, the birth of a child. Then comes public reaction, where fans and critics express emotion and opinion. After that, the rumor phase begins, where unverified claims surface and begin circulating as possible truths. Finally, the narrative hardens, with online communities forming divided beliefs about what is real and what is speculation. This cycle has repeated itself countless times in modern entertainment culture, and this situation appears to be following a similar pattern. Another key element fueling this story is the emotional nature of the subject matter. Anything involving a newborn child naturally triggers strong reactions. People are more sensitive, more protective, and more reactive when it comes to topics involving infants and maternal health. This emotional intensity often reduces the barrier for sharing content, even when it lacks confirmation. In such cases, concern can quickly blur into speculation, and speculation can quickly transform into viral narrative. Meanwhile, Chrisean Rock herself has remained a central figure in the conversation, even when she is not actively commenting on the specific claims. Her past statements, emotional live streams, and documented experiences are being re-examined through the lens of these new allegations. Supporters argue that much of the discourse is unfair and invasive, while critics insist that public figures inevitably face scrutiny over their private lives. This divide only adds more fuel to an already heated discussion. It is also worth noting how rapidly influencer-driven media ecosystems contribute to the spread of such stories. Many pages and accounts thrive on engagement rather than accuracy. In these environments, dramatic framing often outperforms factual reporting, which encourages exaggerated headlines and sensational interpretations. As a result, a claim that begins as an unverified whisper can quickly evolve into a trending topic with thousands of reposts and reactions. In this case, the hospital nurse narrative has taken on a life of its own, detached from any confirmed source or official statement. Yet its impact is undeniable. It has shaped conversations, sparked debates, and reignited interest in Chrisean Rock's personal life in a way that feels both intense and deeply polarized. Whether people believe the claims or reject them entirely, the story has succeeded in capturing widespread attention. As the background to this unfolding situation continues to develop, one thing becomes clear. This is not just about a single alleged statement. It is about the broader ecosystem of celebrity culture, online speculation, and the hunger for behind-the-scenes revelations. In this environment, truth and rumor often compete on equal footing, and the loudest narrative often wins attention first, regardless of its accuracy. And as discussions continue to escalate across platforms, one question now lingers in the air, growing louder with each repost and reaction. What exactly did the nurse allegedly see or claim to see that has triggered such an avalanche of speculation in the first place? That answer, at least according to the viral narrative, is where the story takes a far more controversial turn. As the online conversation continued to intensify, what had initially been framed as vague, unverified chatter began to evolve into something far more structured in the minds of viewers. The so-called hospital nurse revelation was no longer just a passing rumor buried in comment sections. It had become the centerpiece of a growing narrative war, with different sides interpreting the same fragments of information in wildly different ways. At the heart of the conflict was a simple but powerful idea: that someone allegedly present during the hospital period had supposedly shared observations about Chrisean Rock's experience as a new mother and the condition of her newborn son. Even though no official document, interview, or verified recording supported these claims, the internet had already begun treating the story as if it contained hidden layers waiting to be uncovered. And that is where the first major twist began to take shape, not from confirmed evidence, but from interpretation. According to the circulating narrative, the alleged nurse's comments were not framed as a direct accusation or exposure, but rather as concerns and observations that were later exaggerated through reposts and commentary channels. In one version of the story, it was suggested that the nurse had expressed emotional concern about the stress level in the room during the hospital stay. In another version, the claim was completely transformed into something more dramatic, implying that critical information about the baby's condition had been kept quiet. This transformation is where the conflict truly ignited. Supporters of Chrisean Rock immediately pushed back, arguing that the entire situation was a textbook example of social media distortion. They pointed out that nothing official had been released, no verified nurse had come forward publicly, and no hospital statement had addressed the matter. To them, the narrative was not just exaggerated, it was manufactured through repetition, where a vague idea becomes fact-like simply because it is repeated enough times. Critics, however, saw the situation differently. They argued that celebrity environments are often tightly controlled and that not every detail is publicly disclosed in real time. In their view, the absence of official confirmation did not automatically disprove the rumor. Instead, they believed it left room for hidden context that had not yet been shared. This belief, even without evidence, fueled their insistence that something more complex might be going on behind the scenes. As these opposing perspectives clashed, content creators seized the opportunity. Reaction videos began breaking down every possible angle of the alleged story. Some zoomed in on Chrisean's past emotional live streams, suggesting that her behavior during pregnancy and postpartum moments could be reinterpreted in light of the nurse claims. Others compiled timelines of her public appearances, attempting to construct a narrative of events that aligned with the rumor, even though the foundation itself remained unverified. This is where the first twist fully emerged, not as a new piece of evidence, but as a shift in perception. The twist, as framed by viral discussions, was the idea that the story might not be about a hidden medical secret at all, but rather about how quickly misinformation can become emotionally accepted truth in the absence of clarity. In other words, the real shock was not what the nurse allegedly said, but how easily the internet built an entire emotional storyline around it. Still, that interpretation did not slow the spread of more dramatic versions. In fact, it did the opposite. A second wave of posts began circulating, claiming that insiders had clarified the situation in private messages or anonymous comments. These posts suggested that the original claims were either misunderstood or taken out of context, but because they were also unverified, they only added more confusion. Each attempt to correct the story seemed to generate an entirely new version of it. One version claimed the nurse never directly spoke about anything serious, but rather commented on general postpartum stress and hospital conditions. Another version escalated the narrative again, suggesting emotional distress in the room and implying that family tensions may have been present during the hospital stay. None of these versions could be traced back to a reliable, named source, yet they all contributed to the growing sense that something happened, even if no one could agree on what that something actually was. At this point, the conflict was no longer just about Chrisean Rock. It had become about credibility itself. Fans defending her argued that she was being unfairly targeted by recycled rumors and emotionally charged speculation. They emphasized that new mothers, especially those in the public eye, already face intense pressure without having their private medical experiences turned into public debate. To them, the narrative was invasive, disrespectful, and built on unstable ground. On the other side, skeptical viewers insisted that public figures inevitably become subjects of public interpretation. They argued that silence or lack of detailed public clarification often leads to speculation filling the gaps. In their eyes, the nurse narrative was simply the latest example of how celebrity culture operates, where information vacuum is quickly replaced by storytelling. As both sides dug deeper into their positions, the situation reached a tipping point when edited compilations began circulating. These videos stitched together unrelated clips, old interviews, emotional moments, and social media posts, presented in a way that suggested hidden meaning. Music, captions, and dramatic pauses were added to create emotional weight, even though none of the clips directly referenced the alleged hospital claims. This is where the second layer of the twist began to form. The audience was no longer just reacting to a rumor, they were reacting to an interpretation of a rumor that had already been reshaped multiple times. Each layer added emotional intensity while moving further away from any original source. The result was a narrative that felt real to many viewers, even though its foundation remained unverified. Meanwhile, Chrisean Rock's public presence became part of the debate simply through absence and timing. Every time she posted unrelated content or remained silent, it was analyzed for hidden meaning. A smile in a video was called significant. A lack of comment was labeled telling. Even unrelated lifestyle posts were pulled into the conversation, as if they were indirect responses to the ongoing claims. But the most dramatic shift came when some commentators began suggesting that the real issue was not the nurse story itself, but the speed at which audiences were willing to accept emotionally charged narratives about public figures without verification. This perspective reframed everything again, turning the focus from the alleged hospital incident to the behavior of the online crowd. Still, despite these attempts at reframing, the viral energy did not slow. If anything, it intensified. The more people questioned the story, the more content was created about the questioning itself. The narrative became self-sustaining, feeding on both belief and disbelief at the same time. And then came the most unsettling development of all. A new wave of posts began suggesting that the entire situation might be evolving into something even larger than originally thought. Not because new evidence had appeared, but because the story had reached a point where every possible angle was now being treated as part of the mystery. In this version of events, even contradictions were being interpreted as clues. At this stage, the line between fact, speculation, and entertainment had nearly dissolved completely. And just when it seemed like the narrative had reached its peak confusion, a new alleged detail began circulating. One that would shift the entire conversation once again and push the story into an even more controversial direction. Just when the conversation online seemed like it couldn't possibly get any more tangled, the narrative took another sudden turn. One that pushed the entire situation from heated speculation into full-blown digital chaos. What had started as loosely connected claims about an alleged hospital observation now began mutating into something far more intense, driven by new evidence that surfaced across multiple platforms almost simultaneously. This so-called new development wasn't introduced through any official statement or verified source. Instead, it appeared in the form of short clips, screenshots, and reposted voice notes that began circulating rapidly across social media timelines. Each version carried a slightly different framing, but the core implication remained the same: that there was supposedly more to the story than what had been assumed so far. One of the most widely shared pieces of content was an alleged audio snippet, said to be a private recording of a conversation referencing the hospital stay. In the clip, which was never authenticated and appeared in different edited versions depending on the account sharing it, a voice could be heard discussing stress, emotional intensity, and confusion surrounding the time immediately after the birth. Some users claimed the tone suggested concern, while others insisted it had been completely taken out of context and spliced from unrelated material. Regardless of its origin, the clip acted as gasoline on an already burning fire. Within hours, commentary channels began breaking it down frame by frame, analyzing pauses, background noise, and even vocal tone as if it were forensic evidence. The lack of verification did little to slow the momentum. Instead, the ambiguity fueled more interpretation, with every listener hearing something slightly different depending on what they already believed about the situation. At the same time, another wave of content emerged in the form of alleged screenshots. These were presented as private messages between anonymous individuals discussing what had supposedly been observed during the hospital period. Some messages hinted at emotional distress in the environment, while others simply described general postpartum sensitivity and heightened emotions in a medical setting. None of the messages could be traced back to any confirmed identity, yet they were rapidly shared as supporting proof by those already convinced that the situation contained hidden layers. This is where the escalation truly intensified, when fragments, no matter how unreliable, began to accumulate into what felt like a larger picture. Supporters of Chrisean rock immediately pushed back harder than before. They pointed out that every new reveal lacked verification, and that the pattern of recycled claims was becoming more obvious with each cycle. To them, this wasn't a developing story. It was a digital echo chamber where content was being reprocessed, re-edited, and relabeled until it appeared new again. They argued that the emotional weight of motherhood, combined with celebrity exposure, made the situation especially vulnerable to manipulation and exaggeration. However, those who believed there was more beneath the surface saw things differently. They argued that the consistency of certain themes across different posts, stress, emotional intensity, and confusion, suggested that something real had been selectively framed and spread in fragmented form. Even without proof, the repetition itself became a kind of pattern evidence in their minds, reinforcing the idea that multiple people were allegedly referencing the same underlying event. As both sides dug deeper, the situation became less about facts and more about interpretation warfare. Then came the moment that social media quickly labeled the shocking reveal, even though, once again, it was not a confirmed disclosure from any official source. A new wave of posts began circulating claiming that someone connected to the broader conversation had clarified the situation indirectly, but instead of clearing things up, the alleged clarification only made things more confusing. According to these posts, the original hospital-related narrative had allegedly been exaggerated far beyond its initial meaning. What was supposedly described as general emotional intensity in a postpartum environment had, over time, been transformed into something far more dramatic through repeated retellings. In this version of events, there was no hidden medical secret, no dramatic revelation, and no concealed incident. Only ordinary hospital experiences that became distorted through viral interpretation. But almost immediately, this clarification was challenged by another wave of content suggesting the opposite, that the clarification itself might have been incomplete or selectively framed. This counter-narrative argued that even if parts of the story were exaggerated, it did not necessarily mean the entire situation was baseless. Instead, it suggested that people were focusing too heavily on disproving the rumor rather than examining why it spread so quickly in the first place. This back and forth created a new level of escalation. The story was now simultaneously being built up and dismantled at the same time. As confusion deepened, attention shifted once again toward Chrisean rock herself. Every new post, appearance, or silence was analyzed in real time. A casual video was interpreted by some as proof of normalcy, while others dissected it for hidden emotional cues. Even unrelated updates were pulled into the narrative ecosystem, as viewers searched for indirect confirmation or denial of the circulating claims. The psychological effect of this cycle became increasingly visible. Audiences weren't just reacting to content anymore, they were reacting to reactions. Every comment section became a battleground of interpretation, where belief and skepticism collided in real time. The original claim, by this point, had become almost secondary to the engagement it generated. Meanwhile, content creators played a significant role in amplifying the escalation. Compilations titled as Final Proof, Insider Breakdown, or What Really Happened began appearing across platforms, each one promising clarity while delivering yet another layer of interpretation. Background music, slow zooms, and dramatic captions transformed fragmented information into emotionally charged storytelling. The more ambiguous the material, the more engagement it generated. And then, the most surprising shift of all occurred. Not a new piece of evidence, but a collective realization among a growing number of viewers that the story had begun to sustain itself without needing any new information at all. At this stage, even contradictions were being treated as meaningful clues. If two posts disagreed, It was interpreted as hidden confirmation that something important was being concealed. If nothing new emerged, silence itself was labeled suspicious. The narrative had reached a point where it no longer depended on facts to grow. It was being powered entirely by speculation cycles. This was the true shocking reveal hidden inside the escalation. Not a secret about what happened in the hospital, but how quickly an unverified idea could evolve into a full-scale digital phenomenon with its own momentum, logic, and emotional gravity. And just as the conversation seemed to settle into that uneasy realization, a new wave of reactions began forming once again, suggesting that the public response itself might now become the next major turning point in this unfolding story. By this stage, the story had fully escaped its original boundaries and transformed into a widespread digital debate that stretched far beyond a single claim or individual moment. What began as an unverified rumor about an alleged hospital observation had now evolved into a full-scale public conversation involving fans, critics, influencers, and even commentary figures who normally do not engage with personal narratives at this level of intensity. The reaction online was immediate, divided, and emotionally charged. Across platforms, timelines were filled with split opinions, some defending Chrisean rock fiercely, others questioning the narrative's gaps, and many simply observing the unfolding chaos as it developed in real time. The sheer volume of engagement ensured that the topic remained visible for days, constantly resurfacing through reposts, reaction clips, and algorithm-driven recommendations. Supporters of Chrisean rock were among the most vocal groups. They emphasized a consistent theme: the danger of unverified claims being treated as fact when they involve sensitive personal matters, especially motherhood. To them, the situation represented yet another example of how quickly online spaces can turn private experiences into public spectacle without accountability. Many supporters pointed out that no official statement, verified medical professional, or credible institutional source had confirmed any of the circulating allegations. In their view, the entire narrative was built on unstable foundations and amplified by repetition rather than evidence. This group also expressed concern about the emotional toll such rumors could have on a new mother navigating public life. They argued that postpartum periods are already physically and emotionally demanding, and that external pressure from rumors and speculation only adds unnecessary stress. Some fans called for more responsibility from content creators, urging them to avoid amplifying unverified claims for the sake of engagement. Their message was consistent: speculation should not be treated as revelation, and private medical experiences should not become entertainment content. On the opposite side, critics and skeptical observers took a different stance. While many did not claim to fully believe the rumor, they argued that the situation highlighted how unclear communication from public figures often leads to information gaps that the internet fills on its own. In their view, celebrity culture creates an environment where silence or limited disclosure can unintentionally encourage speculation. They insisted that the public's curiosity is not new. It is a predictable outcome of highly visible lives being lived in fragmented, real-time updates. However, even within this skeptical group, there was division. Some users focused purely on analyzing the viral claims, attempting to trace the origin of the nurse narrative and evaluate its credibility. Others shifted attention toward broader discussions about online misinformation, using this situation as an example of how quickly unverified stories can gain traction when they align with emotionally sensitive topics. Meanwhile, social media influencers and commentary channels played a central role in shaping the tone of the conversation. Many creators released breakdown videos discussing the alleged claims, each offering their own interpretation of what might have happened. Some framed the story as a cautionary tale about rumor culture, while others leaned into dramatic storytelling, presenting the situation as a developing mystery rather than a debunked claim. The difference in tone between creators contributed significantly to audience confusion, as viewers were exposed to multiple competing narratives presented with equal confidence. Short-form video platforms amplified this effect even further. Clips under a minute long, often stripped of context, circulated widely with attention-grabbing captions that suggested insider knowledge or hidden truth. These clips rarely included disclaimers about verification, which allowed viewers to interpret them as credible regardless of their origin. As a result, many people encountered only fragments of the discussion, not the full context of uncertainty surrounding it. Outside of fan communities, broader entertainment commentary spaces also began reacting to the situation. Some commentators criticized the speed at which the rumor escalated, pointing out that modern digital culture often rewards immediacy over accuracy. Others highlighted how emotionally charged topics, especially those involving children, health, or family, tend to spread faster than neutral information because they trigger stronger engagement responses. There was also growing discussion about the role of anonymity in fueling such narratives. Many of the alleged insider claims circulating online were attributed to unnamed sources or unverified accounts, making it impossible to assess their legitimacy. This anonymity created a gap where speculation could thrive, as users projected credibility onto content based on formatting, tone, or perceived insider language rather than actual evidence. As the conversation expanded, even unrelated public figures and industry observers began weighing in indirectly. Without addressing the specific claims directly, some emphasized the broader issue of misinformation in celebrity culture. They noted that once a narrative reaches a certain level of virality, correcting it becomes significantly more difficult than spreading it in the first place. This imbalance between creation and correction became a key theme in the wider reaction. Interestingly, some voices in the media space shifted focus away from the alleged hospital story entirely and instead used the situation to discuss audience behavior. They pointed out that the real story might not be about what was said or not said in a hospital, but about how audiences collectively construct meaning from fragmented information. In this framing, the public reaction itself became the most significant part of the entire episode. As reactions multiplied, patterns began to emerge. Supporters focused heavily on emotional protection and privacy. Critics focused on accountability and transparency. Content creators focused on engagement and narrative development. And casual viewers found themselves navigating a complex web of claims, counterclaims, and interpretations without a clear way to distinguish fact from speculation. Despite the intensity of the debate, one shared reality became increasingly clear. There was no unified understanding of the situation. Instead, there were multiple parallel versions of the story coexisting at once, each shaped by different assumptions, priorities, and emotional responses. This fragmentation of perception became the defining feature of the public reaction phase. It wasn't just that people disagreed, it was that they were often reacting to entirely different versions of what they believed the story to be. And as the discourse continued to evolve, attention slowly began shifting toward the final stage of the narrative cycle. The moment where online attention peaks, interpretations collide, and a final twist, whether factual or perceptual, emerges to redefine the entire conversation once again. As the conversation reached its peak intensity, something unusual began happening across social media platforms. The discussion wasn't just continuing, it was fragmenting. Different versions of the story were now circulating simultaneously, each one claiming to be closer to the truth than the others, yet none able to fully establish authority over the rest. Then, just when it seemed like the narrative had settled into permanent confusion, a new wave of posts began spreading, this time framed as a final clarification from someone allegedly closer to the situation than any of the previous unnamed sources. Unlike earlier claims that relied on vague references or recycled interpretations, this wave carried a more structured tone, suggesting an attempt to settle the growing chaos. But instead of bringing closure, it did the opposite. According to these circulating posts, the entire hospital-related narrative had been significantly distorted from its earliest form. The nurse revelation at the center of the controversy was now being described not as an insider exposure, but as a chain reaction of misinterpretation, where a harmless or general observation inside a medical setting was gradually reshaped through multiple layers of reposting, commentary, and emotional exaggeration. At first glance, this seemed like the long-awaited grounding moment. Many users interpreted it as confirmation that the story had been blown out of proportion. Screenshots were shared with captions suggesting that the truth had finally come out, and for a brief period, it looked like the conversation might settle. But almost immediately, another problem emerged. Competing posts began circulating at the same time, claiming that this so-called clarification was itself incomplete and possibly selective. These counterposts argued that while some exaggeration may have occurred, it did not fully address why multiple unrelated accounts had independently referenced similar themes such as emotional stress, confusion, and heightened tension during the hospital period. To them, this repetition still suggested that there was an underlying experience being discussed, just not in the dramatic form that social media had constructed. This clash between "it was exaggerated" and "it still means something happened" reignited the entire debate. And then came the moment that pushed everything into its final twist. A new set of viral clips began circulating, short, heavily edited, and presented as context that changes everything. These clips did not introduce new verified information. Instead, they compiled previously existing moments, old interviews, emotional live-stream fragments, and unrelated commentary, all stitched together with captions implying a hidden connection to the hospital narrative. One clip in particular gained massive traction. It showed Chrisean speaking in an emotional tone during a past live session, discussing stress, motherhood, and public pressure. The clip was not originally about the hospital situation at all, but in its edited form, it was presented as indirect confirmation of the broader narrative circulating online. The framing suggested that her emotional expressions were being reinterpreted in light of the alleged claims. This reinterpretation became the spark for the final escalation. Supporters immediately pointed out that the clip was being misused and taken out of context. They emphasized that emotional moments in a public figure's life are often repurposed online to fit unrelated narratives, especially when those narratives are already trending. In their view, this was a clear example of content manipulation, where editing and timing created meaning that did not originally exist. However, those still invested in the rumor saw the clip differently. To them, even if it was not direct evidence, it contributed to a pattern. They argued that emotional consistency across multiple appearances suggested that something deeper had been affecting her during that period, even if it was not the specific version of events being discussed online. This pattern-based interpretation kept the conversation alive, even in the absence of concrete proof. As both interpretations spread, the situation reached a paradoxical point. The same content was being used to both disprove and reinforce the narrative simultaneously. At this stage, the story began to shift again, not because of new evidence, but because of audience fatigue mixed with curiosity. People were no longer asking only what happened. They were asking why the story refused to settle. The lack of resolution itself became part of the intrigue. Then, the most unexpected development occurred. A wave of commentary accounts began suggesting that the real twist was not hidden in hospital events or alleged insider statements at all, but in the behavior of the online audience itself. They argued that the entire situation had evolved into a mirror of modern digital culture, a space where incomplete information rapidly transforms into emotionally charged storytelling, and where each new layer of interpretation feels like discovery, even when it is just repetition in a different form. This perspective reframed the entire narrative. Instead of focusing on what the nurse allegedly said, attention shifted toward how quickly the internet constructed meaning from uncertainty. The final twist, in this interpretation, was that there may never have been a hidden revelation to uncover in the first place. Only fragments that were continuously reshaped by engagement, emotion, and speculation. But even this reframing did not end the discussion, because as soon as one version of closure appeared, another wave of posts emerged questioning whether the misinformation explanation itself was being used too broadly, potentially dismissing genuine curiosity as overreaction. This counter-response reopened the loop once again, proving that even attempts at resolution could become part of the ongoing cycle. And so, the story reached an unusual stopping point. Not a conclusion, but a suspension. A moment where multiple interpretations coexist without a final verdict, and where the audience remains split between believing the narrative was a misunderstanding or believing that something important still lies beneath the surface. As the digital noise slowly continued in the background, one final question lingered across every platform. Was this ever about a hidden hospital secret? Or was the real story always about how quickly the internet turns uncertainty into a worldwide narrative? And with that question left unanswered, the conversation didn't end. It simply waited for the next spark that would bring it all back into motion once again, At this point, the story has taken on a life of its own. What started as scattered online chatter has now turned into a full-blown digital debate, with every new post, clip, or comment adding another layer of interpretation. And while different sides continue to argue over what is real, what is exaggerated, and what may have been completely misunderstood, one thing is clear: the conversation is far from over. In moments like this, where information moves faster than verification, it becomes more important than ever to think critically about what is being shared and why it is being shared. Viral narratives often grow not because they are fully accurate, but because they are emotionally engaging. They spark curiosity, outrage, concern, or empathy, and those reactions fuel the cycle even further. This situation is a reminder of how quickly a single unverified claim can evolve into a global talking point. Each repost, reaction video, and comment thread adds momentum, sometimes turning uncertainty into something that feels like certainty simply through repetition. And once that happens, separating fact from interpretation becomes increasingly difficult. So before accepting any viral claim at face value, it is worth pausing and asking a few simple questions. Where did this information actually come from? Is there a verified source behind it? Or is it being repeated because it sounds convincing, emotional, or entertaining? At the same time, it is also important to recognize the human side of these stories. Behind every headline, rumor, or trending topic, there are real people whose lives are being discussed by millions. That reality adds weight to how information should be handled, shared, and interpreted, especially when it involves sensitive subjects like health, family, or personal experiences. As viewers and participants in the digital space, the responsibility doesn't just belong to creators or platforms. It also belongs to the audience. Every share, comment, and reaction contributes to how far a story travels and how strongly it impacts the people involved. So now the conversation turns to you. What do you think is really happening behind all the noise surrounding this story? Do you believe this was simply a case of misinformation spreading too fast? Or is there still more beneath the surface that hasn't been fully understood yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your perspective, and join the discussion. Because in today's world, every voice adds another piece to the bigger picture. And if you want more deep dive breakdowns, updated developments, and trending stories like this, make sure to stay connected. The next twist is always just one post away.